I'm also trying something else new today. I'm on a standing desk. Listen to this. Can you hear this? Listen. It's going down. It's going down, 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 down. Back up. Back up to meet me here. Lovely.
Hello, Danny.
Hello, Alex. Exciting. Episode 2.
Episode 2.
You know what episode 2 means?
What does that mean?
Follow-up. Or, as most of the podcasts I listen to call it, most of the content.
I thought you were going to call it The Empire Strikes Back, or what was it called? Revenge of the sequel? No.
Revenge of the sequel. That would be episode 3, surely.
Yeah, you're right. So, let's hear all about how triumphant your driving test was.
My driving test. Now, you actually haven't heard it. We haven't spoken really very much since last time. You may have got the impression from last time that I was quite unprepared for this test, having only driven for a couple of hours in the last 15 years or whatever it was that I said. And you may have thought even that if I was to pass the test with such low preparation, it would be a sort of indictment of the whole American driving system. Or testing system.
You know, I do hear good things about the American driving testing system, so I'm looking forward to hearing how this went.
Well, if that's what you thought, then I have good news for you.
What's that?
Because I failed my driving test.
Nice! Nice!
So, Californian roads are safe still.
Wow.
Without my negative presence.
Hold on, wait, you're going to have to... What happened? This is shocking.
There you go. So I wanted to get your real reaction, so that's why I didn't tell you. But yeah, so I failed almost instantly, in fact, straight out of the gate.
Well, did you forget to put your seatbelt on, or did you insult the instructor or something?
I got all that. I got all my indicators in the right place.
My God, that is a shocking tie. You would actually consider wearing a tie like that to my driving test? An instant fail? Or what happened?
No, so the centre where I was, I mean, I'd done the route a couple of times, so I kind of knew all this. Should have been prepared, but straight out of the gate, you always turn left, and then there's a junction, and they either take you straight forward, or you turn left, or you turn right, and that depends from time to time. If you go straight forward, then there's a bridge.
Okay.
And it's quite a tight bridge, and it's on a corner.
Right.
There's a stop sign on both ends, and there's a little pedestrian walkway along the side.
Amazing. You have this incredibly well memorized.
Yes, well, imagine that. So I stopped at the stop sign, but it happened that, and I had done this a couple of times in the practice leading up to, in fact, immediately for an hour before the test, I did a little practice run. But in this case, it just so happened that as I stopped, there was a car coming in on the other end, and they stopped as well. And there was a pedestrian walking their dog coming in on the right.
Right.
And this combination of things, this car coming in on the other side, this very tight bridge, and this pedestrian sort of just crossing over in line with the car in opposite directions at the point where I was supposed to go, meant that I hesitated too long. So I should have, after having stopped and, checked out what was going on, I should have continued slowly across the bridge. And I'm sure I would have eventually, but I didn't. I stopped for too long.
Oh, no.
And the examiner judged that was sort of making the other people on the road uncomfortable because they didn't know what I was going to be doing because I was hesitating for too long.
Oh, no.
So they led me straight. I had thought that would be, I could tell that obviously it was bad, and I knew straight away, I should have just gone more quickly and shown a bit more confidence there. But I had thought that would be a one-strike kind of thing, and I would have sort of 2 more opportunities to sort of make silly mistakes like that before I failed. But no, she led me straight back to the DMV, and that was that. So
I'm sorry.
It's a bit frustrating.
What a shame. So hold on. What happens? Do you have a chance to retry the test?
Yes. I've booked another test for the end of June.
Okay.
So I've got a chance. I'm going to take a couple more lessons, get a bit more practice.
Right.
I think it is a little bit frustrating because it feels relatively minor and I didn't do anything like super dangerous.
Right.
I was, if anything, I was too cautious. That was the problem.
Right.
But confidence is important in driving, and not sending mixed signals to other drivers is important.
Well, that's true.
And I think, the judgment that I am still not very confident is a fair one. So I don't think it's unfair. And I think taking a couple more lessons and taking another test is a reasonable thing. I mean, I was originally planning on taking 6 lessons before taking the test anyway.
Right.
I only took the test after 2 lessons because the instructor thought that I was already good enough. But so I've actually ended up more or less where I started. So
well,
I'm not too worried.
Well,
it's a bit of a shame though.
My sympathies. I think we can put it down, I guess, to, it's driving tests really, and if they're stringent and if they're strict about it, that's for the better of everybody.
Yep.
However, that's really disappointing for you. I'm just speechless. Poor Danny. I think everybody who's listening out there, we should all send Danny a few tweets of support for his next driving test. And what can I say? That's just shocking.
It's fine. I will get a bit more practice and have another go and be road ready within the month, I am sure.
Perhaps you might be road ready before your Fastmail integration is completed.
No, well, so I have good news for you there. I took your advice after the last episode,
right,
and I contacted their support center.
Okay.
And they were very quick to get back to me, and they said, no, there is no process going on. If you check this button and do this thing, you can restart it, and it will just start from where it left off. It won't have to sit there redoing everything that's already done. So I followed their instructions and I set it all up. And within a day, I think it was within a few hours actually, it had completed and I got the completion mail saying everything had migrated. So great.
So what happened? It sort of, what happened? It paused? Or
I don't know exactly what went wrong. So I think something went wrong with the process. It was obviously a very long process to transfer over 4 gigabytes of mail.
Right.
And something must have gone wrong along the way, whether it was, on Fastmail's end that their script fell over, or whether it was on Google's end that they just stopped serving, they thought enough is enough and stopped serving it. I'm not sure. But whatever it was, just triggering a restart was enough to fix it. So right. I'm now fully migrated, and the support was very quick and easy and painless. So should have done it straight away. So that 1 megabyte a day I was seeing sort of ticking up, that was just new mails coming in.
Oh, okay. Well,
actually, speaking of Fastmail, also the one other thing you mentioned last episode, which I just wanted to clarify quickly, because you mentioned the limits that it had when you first joined.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd better just double check that because, I don't want to find that I'm suddenly going to be trying to send an email and it doesn't send or anything.
Right.
So I just thought I'd double check and also to clarify. And there is a page, which I'll put in the show notes, on their limits with all their different account types.
Right.
But I don't think it will be a problem because on the standard plan, which is what I'm on, it is 4,000 messages received per day.
Okay.
Or 1,000 messages received. I'm not sure what these two... 1,000 megabytes or 4,000 messages.
Right.
And 4,000 messages sent. And it's the same for both sending and receiving.
Right.
So I don't think I'm ever going to be getting anywhere near those limits. So it's basically a non-issue.
Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. That probably prevents people using Fastmail as a spam service, right? For actually sending out massive amounts of emails.
Right.
That's interesting. So they actually still limit it like that.
Well, they do. I actually think it's fairly common for email services to have some sort of limit, but they tend to be very high limits like this.
Did I just say they still limit it like that? I think I did, didn't I?
Did you? I don't know. We'll have to listen back.
I still limit it. That's amazing.
If you did, I didn't notice, which is also interesting in its own way.
Yeah. So, well, that's a little bit of a good news and a little bit of bad news for you there this week, Danny. I have to say, I am very proud of you for failing that test. I mean, if you're gonna,
I try my best.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do poorly, you may as well just flat out fail right at the start of the test, really. I mean,
Well, I don't want to waste anybody's time.
exactly. It's just zero overkill, really.
Right.
I mean, it reminds me of a friend of a friend who used to be so happy in university when he would get like 52%, like 2% over the pass mark for his grade.
Right.
And he'd be so happy because he'd say, "Look, zero overkill."
You did the exact amount of preparation for that exam and no more.
That's right.
Right.
It's exactly what was necessary. I passed, and it's just zero overkill. So if you're gonna fail a driving test, do it in style. Everybody, do it the way that Dani does it. Straight out of the gates, failed. Okay, back we go. It's good she took you back. I mean, I guess she could have taken you around the whole course and given you a sense of hope, and then you get back and said, "Sorry, you messed up at the first corner."
That would have been annoying. But there's a section on the form for insta-fail type things, and they do just take you back for those because it's, obviously it's a waste of everybody's time. And potentially, I mean, if you're failing instantly for something, presumably it's because you're considered to be dangerous on the road.
Right.
So the less time you spend on the road, the better.
Right. Yeah, actually, just before we move on to some new topics, that was it reminded me of one thing that you often see in Japan. You see many cases of people breaking road rules in order to be kind to other drivers. For example, so in Japan, obviously, we're driving on the correct side of the road.
That is the left side of the road.
That's correct. And what you may get is you'll get cases where, so if you're on the left side of the road, turning right means you need to turn across oncoming traffic.
Right.
So you'll get cases where this may be a little bit difficult for our American and European listeners to envisage, but you'll get cases where people on the other side of the road will wait for you so that you can turn across the incoming traffic.
People on the other side, people ahead of you, you mean?
No, people basically, normally you should give way to oncoming traffic when you're turning through it.
Right.
I'm trying to do this without making reference to left and right, which is quite challenging. So if you need to turn through oncoming traffic, obviously they have the right of way, so you need to wait. There will be many cases in Japan where the person who's oncoming will see that you're trying to turn across the oncoming traffic, so they will stop in the middle of the road and hold up all of the oncoming traffic behind them so that you can go first. So that happens quite frequently, and it's a little bit disconcerting because when you are the person who's turning across the oncoming traffic, it creates quite a dangerous situation, because what about if, like, somebody on a scooter or on a bike decided to go around the oncoming traffic that had stopped? You'd clip them straight on right there. So often it's a little bit sort of, kindness to other drivers is extremely important. Good courtesy is vital for a safe traffic system. However, road rules exist so that everybody is understanding what everybody else is going to do. So, when that kind of situation...
And confidence is important as well as kindness.
Exactly. And so when that kind of situation happens, it actually is extremely dangerous. And that happens quite frequently in Japan. So Japanese drivers, you're great. You're very kind. Thank you very much. But let's all stick to the rules together, shall we?
Right.
So there's a public service message for all of Japan.
Well, our many, many Japanese listeners.
That's right. Speaking of Japan... Another beautiful segue. We pride ourselves on our excellent quality segues here.
You are a pro at those.
I'm a segueist. Now, speaking of Japan, what are we talking about next?
BitSummit. That is the premier Japanese indie games festival, which just happened last weekend, the weekend before.
That's correct. So, just a little bit of context there. There are a number of different Japanese game events, the largest of which is, of course, Tokyo Game Show. And Tokyo Game Show is a consumer-focused event, consumer and hobbyist and cosplayer-focused event. And consequently, Tokyo Game Show is huge, and there's massive budget and big booths and, huge rigs with lights from the ceiling and massive sound systems. And it's just all very big and a lot of money and a lot of glamour and glitz. And that is Tokyo Game Show.
It is, put quite simply, it is like the E3 of Japan.
That's correct. Yeah, it's basically it's where all the money goes, and it's the big sort of show. Basically, if you are an enthusiastic gamer and you want to try titles before they're going to be released, or you want to catch up on the latest from your favorite game developers or publishers, then Tokyo Game Show is the place to do that.
Right, and that's on every September in not actually in Tokyo, is it? It's in Chiba.
Yeah, that's right.
But never mind that.
Well, it's all basically one massive sprawling metropolis. But 5 years back, a certain group of individuals decided that what Japan needs right now is more support for the smaller game developers. Basically the indie developers, the 2-person, 1-person sort of pop-up little outfits where people just get together and make a game and want to show it out to the public. And thus was born an event in Kyoto, of all places, called BitSummit. And BitSummit has been going for 5 years, and I'm proud to say that I have not missed one of them.
This was the first one that I've missed.
Yes.
Sad. I have been to every one, but since I no longer live in Kansai, I could not make it to this one.
There were, your presence was sorely missed, Danny.
They should name an award after me.
The Danny Wright Award?
That's right. The Danny Wright Absent Friends Award.
Yeah, Danny's not here anymore award. That's a nice one to receive, isn't it? Yeah, so BitSummit, the main difference is that BitSummit, the nice thing about it is that it maintains the charm of the first one. The first one, if you were lucky enough to attend, you would know that it was a developer-only event, and you had developers and you had some sponsors, middleware sponsors, and other sort of game industry support vendor sponsors. And it was focused only on developers, and it was a tiny little community hall with a stage and a broken air conditioning system. And
it was all really small. Do you know what it reminded me of? Just to go on a tangent every time you try and say anything. Do you know what it reminded me of? Did you go to any sort of Amiga, or it would have been the Spectrum for me, but like microcomputer sort of conventions, almost overstating it, but meetups in your local town where people would bring their Amigas and just play about on them and show each other the things they'd made or whatever. Did you ever go to any of those sorts of things?
I would have loved it if we had some of those in Adelaide, where I grew up. Adelaide, it was very much a Commodore Amiga or a Commodore 64 sort of a culture. We didn't have many of the consoles, but sadly I was either too young or we just didn't know about where these sort of meetups were. So no, I didn't.
Right. I went to some when I was very young. Not Amiga ones, but I went to some that had sort of old. They were already old by that point. They were already sort of retro culture, microcomputers. And I also went to some general computer fairs, which would have bits of PC hardware and software and things that you could trade and buy and stuff. And it was a really similar sort of atmosphere. Like everyone was just a hobbyist together at that first BitSummit, I thought.
Yeah, that was the nice thing about it. It was shoulder to shoulder. Everyone was kind of sweaty, and you're like peering over people's shoulders to see games, and there was a lot of sort of awkward giggling, and it was really nice. Just I guess the word to describe it is unpretentious, and that's been the great consistent thing about BitSummit through the years. And we just had the 5th one, is that it remains unpretentious, and it's just sort of a simple congregation of people. Now it's open to the public. And that's been a great thing because Japanese gamers are fantastic. They're just so enthusiastic and open-minded and curious, and you really feel the sense that they are so happy to meet you, and they're so happy to try your game, and lots of smiles.
They're almost surprised that you're interested in playing it as well. Like they're very modest.
Yeah, and the nice thing is there's such little cynicism in the Japanese gamer consumer market. They're very very curious and very open-minded, and there's not much of a case of this is just a copy of that game, or you just made this with Unity store assets, didn't you? Or it's nothing like that. It's just people are just there to play good games, and that consumer character plus the unpretentious nature of the event creates this great atmosphere of just nice games, nice people, good fun. There's been over the 5 years, BitSummit has you can't say that it hasn't had its fair share of growing pains. But now you really feel that the last year and this year, they've definitely had a rhythm of it just feeling like this great little sort of small scale, actually large, but it feels very small kind of event. So this time, the company that I work for, we were showing our latest title, and we were extremely honored to win an award. This would be I think between us, the 4th award that we've won, I think, at this event.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I forgot, because Vito Backroom has got the Vermilion Gate a few years ago, and then this is the 2nd, but you also
Yeah,
got some.
That's right. So the previous game company that I was with called Winning Blimp, we won the audio design, excellence in audio award 3 years ago, which is how I hooked up with Vita in the first place. But so this time we were extremely honored to receive the Famitsu Media Highlight Award. Now, this award, of all of the awards that you could win, second perhaps to the Vermilion Gate, which is sort of like the grand mega prize, the Famitsu Media Highlight Award is extremely, extremely prestigious, just at least in our minds, because Famitsu, as you know, is the largest, most reputable, longest-running game industry publication in Japan.
All right.
So it's kind of like you're a journalist and you win, like, I don't know what the Times Award for good journalism. I don't know. I'm not really sure what the longest-running publication is in the West, but it was a fantastic event, and as I said, just a whole bunch of great people. And what's also nice is that BitSummit doesn't just feature great games from smaller and medium-sized Japanese game companies. It also openly receives entries from around Asia and people who have the means to come out from America and Europe as well. You can
people fly in from all over, don't they? Especially over the years, it's that side of things has increased, and it's at first it was. Like that, I remember in the early days of BitSummit, they were talking about trying to give more exposure to small and indie developers in Japan, and that's still very much a big part of what it's about. But it's also become like a cross-pollination of ideas where people can come from America and Europe and meet with Japanese developers and talk with them and show them their games and look at the Japanese games, and it's much more. It definitely goes both ways these days, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it's all the better for it because these smaller hobbyist Japanese groups and also smaller Japanese companies having the ability for them to have like an open floor of interesting, stimulating, small scale ideas and medium and large scale ideas too, of course, from around Asia and around in rare cases also from around Europe and from around America as well. It only serves to inspire the Japanese game development community here and to sort of make them feel involved, I guess, because that's one thing that has been a little bit of an issue. Perhaps issue is not the right word. I guess a little characteristic of the Japanese independent game development scene is that up until BitSummit, at least as far as I know, it's been fairly insular. You get like the komiket dojin world of fan art and fan game copies where people actually create identical copies of games just with their own just like fan art basically, but in the game development sense. But those, and
even when they come up with original games, I think in the kind of dojin community there's been a reluctance to share those with anybody outside of that community, and certainly to sell them, which is just not even on their radar.
Exactly right. I mean, it's fan art, and just like when you're drawing fan art for yourself, if you're drawing fan art of, say, for example, I don't know, let's say you do your own fan art of your favorite Marvel comic character or whatever, are you going to go and take that to a show and show it off? Well, probably not. I mean,
right.
It's probably something that you're happy to show your friends and other friends who are also doing fan art, where it's quite safe and you get a predictable response. But it's not something that you seek to put out there, and especially not for money. And that has meant that the Western idea of indie game development has just developed in a very different way here. And I wouldn't say it's been slow to develop, and I think just the objective has been somewhat different. But BitSummit being free to exhibit, which is amazing, they do that intentionally so that, just to encourage people to come out and to just give it a try. You set up a table, get a little poster set up and sit there with your game and have some people come and play it. And I think...
Yeah, and they get a lot of very young people and students showing some super interesting games. I remember 3 years ago, the year that we met, that was the first BitSummit where VR was like a huge thing, and everyone was bringing in Oculus Rifts and showing their demos for the Oculus Rift and stuff.
Right.
And there was some really sort of interesting, weird, not quite games, but super interesting. Like there was one weird one. I can vaguely remember it. That was like where you were a horse head or something. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
So it I think it attached a horse head to VR goggles. That was bizarre, but I'll have to look that up and see if I can put it in the show notes or something. But yeah, just really wild ideas, and it was great.
Yeah, that's always been the good thing about it, because unlike Tokyo Game Show, where it's all about budget and it's about return and it's about marketing and exposure, in this case, this sounds like a marketing pitch in itself, but it's more about the games, really.
I mean, there is the marketing and exposure and stuff as well, but that's almost like a side effect.
Exactly.
That's like, especially in the awards help with that.
Yeah.
Like they're quite good for that, I think.
Yeah.
But when you're actually there, most of the time, and I've helped you guys with your, when you've been exhibiting in the past, so I know what it's like. Most of the time, you are intensely focused on showing your game to people and helping them get set up and explaining it to them. And then whenever you get a break, you spend that whole time running around all the other stalls trying to see as much as you can.
Exactly.
In the time that you've got.
Yeah, that's right. This time it was, interestingly, not so much on the VR side. I think maybe that's a comment on, the direction that the game industry is heading right now. But a few really nice contributions from a few countries around Southeast Asia, which is great to see. It's excellent to see, really good quality games coming out of cities where you generally don't associate with, indie game development. There was an excellent game called Stifled by a group called, I think they were called Gattai Games. And they're from Singapore, and that was great.
All right.
Caught up with the one of their developers who was at the show showing off the game. That specific game was an echolocation game, where it's a PSVR game where you trigger sound and it visualizes sound sources so that you can detect where objects are in your environment. So it's echolocation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, and a great bunch of guys, and yeah, just great to see. I'd imagine if you're a developer in Singapore, your options in Singapore for broader exposure on the international scale for showing your game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there may not be this kind of event in Singapore, at least not on this scale. So it's great to see guys coming up and flying the flag for their country, and just sort of showing that, yep, we're making good stuff down here too. Because I think the game industry you often associate with, obviously Seattle and obviously California, Los Angeles and San Francisco, and then of course the European centers for game development, London, obviously the UK, Scotland, London, and then of course Europe, Stockholm, and the various Berlin, and the various places where you associate with game development. But these smaller cities, very often you just don't really hear much of them. So it's great to see what they're doing.
Right. Great. Yeah. Well, I'll have to check that out and put a link in the show notes. And I will also put a link to Paper Garden, which is Vitae Backroom's game that won the Famitsu Media Highlight Award. Well done, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, I forgot to mention that, didn't I? Yes, the game is called Paper Garden, and it's by Vitae Backroom. And it's a game about throwing paper planes and the inherent joy therein.
It looks great in the video as well. So all of that will be in the show notes.
I have something else exciting to share with you, Danny.
Okay, do tell, because you've written it here so I can see it.
Right.
But
so
I don't know what it means.
Right. Okay. So the topic it's called kibasen, which basically means riding horse battle.
Right.
Now, this is okay. So I'm sort of trying. I'm biting my lip to restrain my enthusiasm here for this, because I have been in Japan for a long time, and without a doubt, unquestionably, this is the most amazing thing I have seen. So I'm going to do my best to convey the amazingness of this. But if it sounds really boring, that's only because of my description, not because of how amazing it is or isn't. So at primary school, so in Japan you have basically primary school or elementary school, if you like, which goes for 6 years, followed by junior high school, then high school. So in elementary school, primary school, you have sports days like anywhere else in the world. And one of the events at the sports day, the events generally are pretty unusual from a Western standpoint. I mean, I remember in Australia, sports days generally tended to have sort of track and field style events. like 100-meter dash or relay or...
Right, traditional athletic events.
Yeah, like long jump or, things like that. In Japan, they're all a bit more unusual. You get sort of ones where all the kids have to throw these little kind of colored bean bags into a basket, and then you count how many, like a basket that's high above their heads, and they have to count who gets the more bean bags. And they've got the tug of war actually with long beams of straw, like hardened straw instead of ropes, which is kind of interesting. And they've got the other kinds of things like, you got to tie your legs together with a partner and run in synchronization and things like that. Now, last year was the first time when my son was in year 1. This is the first time I experienced kibasen. And just last weekend, we had his year 2 sports day, and this was the second time I experienced. So let me tell you what it is. Kibasen involves only year 5 and year 6 students, so it's just the big kids.
Which is how old?
That is about 12 and 13, I guess, or 11 to 13.
12 and 13, 11 to 13, okay.
Yeah, so that's just the big kids. Now, kibasen, as the name describes, what it is basically dueling horses made up of primary school kids. The way it works, listen carefully now, this is going to be hard to describe just vocally, just orally, but here we go. Imagine you have 4 people standing in a square shape, all facing forward, right?
4 people standing in a square shape. So one is in front of the other and 2 are side by side and in the middle of the...
No, okay, so 2 in front, 2 behind, basically.
2 in front, 2 behind.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And all facing forward. Now, the two kids at the back have their inside arms on the shoulders of the 2 kids in front.
Okay, yeah.
Inside arm only. So that creates kind of, if you look at it from the top, it's like an H shape sideways.
Yeah.
Now, you have a 5th kid who sits on top of those arms in the middle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the 2 kids...
Facing forward.
And the 2 kids at the back with their outside arms, they're holding the feet of the kid in the middle.
Oh, wow. So he's astride the middle arms and his feet are sticking out to the side, and the outside arms of the 2 back kids are the stirrups of the horse, essentially.
Exactly right.
Right.
Okay, that is a horse. Now, the idea of kibasen is that the rider who's in the middle wears either a red hat or a white hat, and you have red horses versus white horses. So the idea is that as the horses charge each other, the goal is for the rider to snatch the hat off the opponent.
Is it always 1-on-1, or is it like a battle? Is it more like a joust or a battle?
Okay, now this is where it gets amazing. So that is, I've seen 3 versions of it, but it's basically the entire year. So a year in Japan, depending on the size of the school, will be, maybe sort of 3 classes of 30 kids. So about 90 or 100
90
kids.
90 people. Wow. So 90. So let's say 100 people, and that's divided by 5.
Right.
Would be 20 horses.
Right. So you have basically 20 horses.
Which 10 white and 10 red.
Exactly. Now,
amazing.
This is utterly amazing. Now, basically, I've seen 3 variations of it. The one that impressed me the most, which I'll talk about first, I saw last year at the school that we were at. The way it works is you have 10 horses. 1 horse, the rider wears a special colored singlet, and he or she is the general.
Oh.
And the general is at the back with all of the horses surrounding him or her, dishing out commands, strategic commands, to protect him or herself from the other army, basically.
Is it the person sitting astride the horse that is considered the general, or all 5?
It's always the rider. The rider does everything. Basically, the rider
does everything.
The rider tells the 4 kids underneath him or her where to go. So it's basically all on the rider. So now, if you imagine this, when I saw it last year, the first time I'd seen this, suddenly they all started climbing on top of each other, and I said to my wife, "What is this? What is this?" And she said, "Oh, this is just kibasen." This is amazing. And it's like this one guy at the back. And I can see the teacher will blow a whistle, and they've got referees around the ground who are holding red flags and white flags in opposing arms. So when there is a duel, the referee will run up and then hold up the flag to signify who got the hat first, which color it belongs to.
I see. If both hats end up being taken, the referee is checking which one came first.
Exactly. And then
when you lose your hat, are you out of the game?
Exactly. When you lose your hat, you have to dismount, and those 5 kids leave the ground.
Right.
So when I saw it last year, the first thing that happened is I said, "Look at that! They're in formation. Like they've got the general at the back, and he's commanded the horses to be like in a pincer shape,
right? Like a real battle.
It's like a real battle, and they're charging ahead, And you can see that like the outlying horses will do battle, and some of them will fall as hats are being taken. And the goal in that particular case is to get the general's hat. So it comes down to that the general is basically sort of hiding behind the soldiers in front,
right?
And commanding them to flank him, or to take the rear, or to come around from behind. It was so incredible. And this is like
amazing.
There's like 12 and 13-year-old kids doing this. And bear in mind that when they lock up, the kids, what happens, of course, if the kids lock hands because they're trying to grab each other's hats.
Right.
So they lock hands, and that you can see their hands sort of kind of like a strength contest, sort of. They're both trying to.
The front kids of both horses.
No. The horses don't do anything. They just follow the lead of the rider. It's all the rider.
Okay, but the front kids of the horses have got their hands free. Are they allowed to do anything with those hands, or are they only allowed to move around?
They're only allowed to move around.
Okay.
So the people who are the horses don't do anything except just follow the command of the rider.
Okay.
And they lock up hands, and they'll be sort of like dueling with their hands for a while, and then all of a sudden somebody will get a hand free and snatch the head off, and the referee will lift up the flag, and everybody cheers, and the kids dismantle and leave the pitch. And my God, it was just so incredible. And the general at the back was calling out, around here, no, watch out over that side. And they got this sort of group of 2 that he had commanded to come around from behind the other army. So they were coming in from the back, and then the general on the other side noticed that they were going around the side, so he called across, horses to go and defend on the left side because there's coming in from the back. And it's honestly the most amazing sort of spectator sport I've ever seen. And when it was all over last year, I was just like frothing at the mouth. This is amazing. And everybody around me is just going, what? It's just kibasen. Everybody does it. You've never seen this before? Yeah, it is. This is what you do in primary school. And it's like, how can I have lived in this country for so long and nobody's ever told me about this? and I mean, this is you don't hear about it. It's not like what you'd consider traditional Japanese.
I suppose it's just a normal. I mean, we don't tell newcomers to our respective countries, very often what we did in sports day when we were 10. So I suppose it doesn't occur to people to mention.
It was just utterly amazing. So last weekend was a different school, and they again had kibasen. And when I found out it was the sports day, I was like, yes, I'm there. And like
you're getting ready to place your bets.
And my wife was there with my daughter, and my son, of course, he's in year 2 now. He was the year 2 student. They just watch and they cheer on either the red team or the white team. And I had to say, sorry, I'm just going to move over there by myself to get a better vantage point to take a video of this, because this is the most precious thing in Japan ever. So the rules were a little different in this case. They had the first one was all kids. There was no general. So it was basically like a free-for-all. There was some degree of strategy. Some kids were sort of obviously more leadership-inclined. Kids were, dishing out not so much commands, but basically saying, get over there, or watch out over there.
Right. So is that last man standing in that sense?
Exactly. So the thing that was different, the third variety, which I hadn't seen last year, was this one also had a one-on-one.
Oh, okay.
And that was exhilarating because basically in that case there were 5 horses lined up, ready to do battle, and you have the 2 front horses go against each other. And if you win, you stay in, and if you lose, you dismount and leave. So basically, that is exactly like last horse standing, essentially.
Oh, I see. So yeah.
And
wow.
They had there was this girls team that were just incredible. They had this in this one-on-one version. There's another tactic you can use. You can actually push the other horse forward or backwards, so to speak, like just push at them. So the riders will be dueling with their arms, and the horse people underneath will just be constantly marching forward. So depending on who...
So they're not allowed to use their arms, they're just marching into each other.
Exactly. So
like with their chests.
Exactly. So depending on who is larger and who is taller, because of course when you stand up on the stirrups of the 2 people's hands at the back, depending on your actual height, you can be towering over the other horse.
Right.
And that gives you a height advantage over them. So that's what happened. There was like this one team of girls with this really tall rider in the middle. and she was just towering over the other horses, and they would just march forward and push them back over the boundary of the game area, and that would be counted as a win for the red team.
Oh, I see. So there's a game area as well. If they fall out of the game area, then it's equivalent to losing their hat.
Right.
They're out.
That was So actually, there was a father standing next to me and said, "This isn't kibasen, this is sumo."
Right. Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
Because it essentially is. But yes, so absolutely incredible. What is incredible about it is just the fact that it's so fantastic to see this kind of very traditional. I mean, this kind of horse battle. Obviously, the feudal Japan, they've been doing that for a long time, and it's very quaint to see it embodied in this sort of modern form, and done with 11 to 13-year-olds. And the kids really get into it, and they love it. And
I'm sure.
The other thing is, it's actually quite dangerous because when a kid is towering over you trying to grab your hat, and you lose balance, you fall onto the ground. And
right. I mean, it sounds super dangerous, especially when you've got these two horses charging into each other as well. It sounds like all 10 of you are just going to collapse into a pile.
So you see at the end of the event, you'll see like kids like limping off, and kids, walking off the pitch with holding their elbows and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of damage, I guess, but everybody's smiling, and of course the mums and the dads love watching it, and it's extremely exciting. It happens really fast. You'll watch some kids who have the ability to like really snatch really quickly to get the hats off the opponent's heads, and it's just what can I say? You will probably not find kibasen anywhere on the internet. Maybe you could probably find it on YouTube, but it's funny that in Japan, you get Japanese pro leagues for everything. Japanese people love sport, and they love trying different sports from all around the world, even cricket. But I'm just shocked that there is no like professional adult league of kibasen, because maybe it's because like as you get older, you're just too heavy to carry on the arms of people. Perhaps
it sounds like the sort of thing that they might do on like variety shows and things like that, rather than as a proper sport. I mean, it would. I mean, it's just so thrilling to watch, and so this is the second time I've seen it. So if you ever have the opportunity to come to Japan, and you happen to have a primary school child, and that child happens to be going to a school, do not miss the sports day. And it's the kibasen is traditionally the last event. It's kind of like the oh, well, yeah, it sounds like it would have to be, because you'd just all be injured by the end of it, so you wouldn't be able to do any others. That's right. Yeah, just fantastic. So, yes, that was what I was... I've just been dying to share this with somebody, because, no Japanese person around me thinks twice about kibasen. It's just like... It's like somebody gushing to you about how exciting a 100-meter dash is. Well, yeah, I guess it's exciting, but we all do it, so... Yeah. Anyway. It's funny, we're going to finish this, and my wife's going to ask me what we did our podcast about this week, and I'll say kibasen, and she'll probably think we're idiots, but no change there. Yeah. Right. So, on that note, we received a few comments from one or two of our enthusiastic listeners for episode 1 that we ended our previous episode too abruptly. So I guess we're going to... Yeah, it was quite abrupt.